What's up, friends? Every so often we stop from our regular series and we do a topic that's trending. So today we're going to talk about coping. What are some healthy ways to get through our lives? You guys check this video out.
You ever think about stress? Like, we all have things that trigger us or set us off. Things that make us feel anxious or worried or irritated or even depressed. So 7th grade, I show up, I think this is gonna be a breeze, you know? I'm already a superstar athlete. I'm already headed to any league I want. And coach decides to start us out with a nice circuit run around the school. Now, for those of you who didn't go to my school, which is probably all of you, a circuit was just a nice short 1.8 mile loop around our building. So when coach said, hey, yep, we're gonna start with a nice 1.8 mile loop, and let me tell you, I did not like running at all. Started, it's okay, it's going okay. About a half mile in, I realized I couldn't breathe. And I was like, so I kept going, another quarter mile. Guys, I kid you not, I hid in the woods. I called my parents, I said, Mom, I can't do this. Soccer is just, I'm not made for this. God has something different for me. Soccer is not it. And I continued the season, but for the rest of the school year, I dreaded going to soccer practice after school every day. And you may not have had the same worries that I had when I was younger, but experiencing things that are uncomfortable, stressful, and even depressing is unfortunately a part of life for all of us. I mean, things like disagreements with a friend, having your saved information erased on a game. Man, I hate that. Ads you can't skip on YouTube. Like, it's the longest 15 seconds of our lives. Cleaning up the cat litter, dropping your phone on the concrete, you know, when you're like, waiting in line at amusement parks. Those are the kinds of things we'd rather all not have to deal with. Why? Because of the way they make us feel. And sometimes the stuff we don't want to deal with is small and it's easy to move past. I mean, if we get frustrated with ads on YouTube, we just don't watch them. You know, the 5 seconds and then skip. If we drop our phone, we just walk around with a broken screen for a while. If we really want to ride the roller coaster at the amusement park, we just wait in the long line. Problem solved, right? But sometimes the things we'd rather not have to face are bigger issues. These are the things that stress us out or upset us in ways so big that we just don't know how to deal with them. Things like the police showing up to our house because our parents are fighting again, a sibling struggling with drugs or alcohol, a friend lying to us over and over, feeling like we can't seem to get out of our depression, not being able to go on the trip at school because we're failing all of our classes, being dumped by our boyfriend or girlfriend, having to go back to school after a horrible rumor was spread about us on Insta, living through the coronavirus pandemic. These things are so much more painful. And because of that, they can make our feelings much more intense. And when we feel that deep depression, hurt, anxiety, fear, panic, pain, and shame, all of that, I think if we're honest, most of us don't know what to do with it. Maybe we try to do anything to not have to face it. We avoid it so we don't have to think about it or deal with the feelings or circumstances we're experiencing. Or maybe when we're experiencing these feelings, we do the exact opposite. We feel that deep depression and hurt and pain and anxiety to the point where those intense feelings feel like they take control over us. Maybe we don't try to avoid our feelings, but we don't really deal with our feelings either. We simply don't know what to do with what we feel, so we don't do anything at all. See, we all have different ways of dealing with what we feel. That's called coping. And coping is simply how we deal with the difficult circumstances, situations, or feelings in our lives. And there are usually 2 ways to deal or cope with what's happening in and around us: the helpful way or the unhelpful way. And helpful coping skills are so important. They give us ways to handle our emotions or process what we're dealing with so that we can not only feel better in the moment, but moving forward in the future too. Helpful coping skills are things we do that are good for us. They're healthy ways to deal with our feelings. So What are these coping skills that can help us through difficult situations we face? Well, there are several. So I asked some of my friends what they're using. Here's what they said.
When I'm stressed, I work out. For me, it's playing piano.
Play with slime, because who doesn't love playing with slime? And it makes fart noises.
For sure, journaling. I mean, I love all the words.
Oh, for sure, candles. I call it candle therapy.
Take long, deep breaths. Come on, try it with me. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. What the heck is bothering me?
What's great is that there are so many things we can do to deal with stressful or difficult times. I mean, things like putting on a favorite playlist, praying, talking to a friend, counselor, or trusted adult, getting plenty of sleep. I don't know if you guys know about that one. It's super great. Try it out. Going outside into nature, watching a funny video on YouTube, eating healthy food. But on the opposite end, there are also ways of coping with our feelings that are unhealthy. There are some unhelpful things we do to deal with what we feel. They're the things we do to try to ignore or forget about or escape from what's happening in and around us. And these could be staying in bed for days at a time, binging Netflix or YouTube for hours when struggling, punching the wall or smashing things, turning to things like drugs and alcohol, cutting or harming ourselves physically, avoiding or shutting out the people who love and want to help us, spreading rumors or being disrespectful to take the attention off ourselves, picking fights with our friends or family just to get our anger out. Now, can I let you in on a little secret? Everybody struggles with this. I mean, you, me, your parents, your group leaders, the people at school who seem to have it all together, every single person struggles to choose healthy ways to deal with what we feel. And I think one reason for that is because coping can be difficult. Sometimes the stuff we turn to isn't all that bad. I mean, exercise, naps, video games, ice cream, Netflix, sleep, all those things can be helpful when we do them in healthy ways. But sometimes we use them in unhealthy ways, and that's when they can create more problems. Coping in unhealthy ways can hurt us more than it helps us. Here's what I mean. When we go for a run, that's great because it helps us take a break or work out some anxiety. But when we run 4 times a day to avoid our anxiety, that's when it could lead to harm for us physically. When we watch a couple hours of Netflix to make ourselves laugh when we're sad, that's awesome. But when we watch Netflix for 24 hours straight because we don't want to deal with what's making us sad, that's not as okay. When we take a nap because we're overwhelmed, I love me a nap. That's helpful because it can re-energize us. But when we sleep all day and don't get out of bed, that's not so helpful. See, the problem with all the unhealthy ways to cope is that they only work for a moment. I mean, sure, you might feel better in that moment, but at the end of the day, that feeling you're working through, it's still there. That circumstance or struggle didn't change or just go away. It's not gone just because you tried not to think about it for a few hours. Depending on how you choose to cope, it's possible to end up with an even bigger issue to deal with. And that's because unhealthy coping doesn't help you in the long run. And honestly, this type of coping doesn't really help you deal with what you're experiencing. And the reality is, you're going to face difficult circumstances and big feelings for the rest of your life. Like, for the rest of your life. That's why it's so important to think about healthy ways to cope now as a middle schooler. I want that for you, but more than that, so does God. We can find a lot of examples and wisdom about how to handle those things in the Bible. These are real words written by real people who dealt with real feelings. So in other words, they get it. I want to jump into a book of the Bible that's found in the Old Testament, which is the portion of the Bible written before Jesus lived on earth. And this particular book is called Lamentations, because a lamentation is a way to express deep grief or pain or sorrow. And a lot of what is written is actually poetry. The person who wrote this book was dealing with a lot of sadness in their life at the time. They'd witnessed the destruction of the city of Jerusalem, and it was a pretty horrible situation. A lot of people died, and most of those who survived were starving, injured, and homeless. So let's take a look at what was written after witnessing this devastating situation. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Okay, let's break this down. First, in this passage, there's a reality check. The author made a choice to be honest about what they were going through, a choice to deal with how they felt. They acknowledged the painful stuff and named all the things that were hard for them in that moment. It talked about afflictions, wandering, bitterness, and feeling sad or downcast. All of those words that describe deep pain, sadness, isolations, and feelings of despair that we can all probably relate to. Now, even though what the author experienced was pretty terrible, the feelings they felt weren't bad. Guys, it's okay to feel pain and sadness and isolation and despair and whatever else we might feel. It's when we let those feelings control us or cause us to do unhealthy things that they can become a problem. But in the second part of this passage, something changed. The sad author who wrote sad poetry didn't stay stuck in sadness. Instead, they made another choice. This time, it was a choice to do something to help deal with their feelings, a choice to take action, a choice to cope in a more helpful way. The author of Lamentations chose to cope by focusing on God's love and faithfulness. They made the choice to have hope. How? By reminding themselves every time they woke up, got out of bed, and maybe even had some breakfast, that every morning is a fresh start. That with God, there's always a possibility for more, for better, for help, and for hope. Does that mean that things just suddenly got better? No, there was still sadness and destruction all around. But they coped with what they were experiencing in a healthy and helpful way. They put good things into their brain. They reminded themselves every day that God's compassion never fails. And with God's love, they didn't have to be controlled by circumstances and feelings. And that truth is the same for us. You can have hope. You can choose to deal with the painful feelings and emotions you experience in helpful ways. You can find healthier ways to cope that will carry you forward. You can choose what to do with how you feel. I don't know about you, but I want to choose healthy and helpful things that will make my life better. And while coping in healthy ways may not fix everything or make what I'm dealing with go away, it will help me manage the big feelings and difficult circumstances I may face. And it might stop things from getting worse. And I want that for all of us. I want all of us to cope in ways that are helpful. I want us to remember this. You can choose what to do with how you feel. Here's how. You can start by asking yourself 2 questions. First question, what's one part of my life that's difficult to deal with? Maybe you're dreading the bad grade in English you know will be on your report card this quarter. Or your dad left and it's been something you haven't been coping with in a healthy way. Or you feel anxiety at school that leaves you upset at the end of every day when you get home. Whatever it is for you, be honest with yourself about what's making it difficult for you to cope. Simply naming and talking about what you're dealing with is the best place to start. And the second question, what do I usually do when I feel this way? Do you avoid, ignore, procrastinate, blame, get grumpy, get help, go on a walk, pray, practice deep breathing? What are your go-to coping skills? Are they helpful and healthy or not? Now, here's the encouraging part. You get to choose helpful ways to deal with what you feel. You have the power right now to change the way you cope for the better. So the next thing you can do, choose to change some patterns for the better. Instead of shutting down, talk to your group leader. Instead of binging Netflix, give yourself a time limit. Maybe take a 1-hour break from the assignment that's stressing you out instead of procrastinating for days. Set an alarm to remind you when the break time is over. Try listening to a worship playlist or writing down a prayer or looking up some verses in the Bible to help you shift your focus to what you know to be true about God and how he feels about you. Whatever it is, make just one small step forward toward a healthier way of coping. And remember, this isn't a one-time fix. Like the author of Lamentations said, you'll need God's help on the daily sometimes. So ask for it. Let that be one of your first steps to helpful coping. If you're struggling to know where to start, maybe begin where the writer of this scripture did. Shift your focus to what you know to be true about God and how he feels about you. When you find yourself facing overwhelming feelings or hard challenges, focus on God. Ask for his help. Remember what is true about how he feels about you. How does God feel about you? Yo, he loves you so much, exactly how he made you. He created you just the way you are. He gave you your abilities and things that you love. And he loves being your friend. Also promises that he's working for good in everything that you're going through, even if it's really, really hard. He says that he'll never leave you. He loves you too much to leave you. He's with you right now, and his heart is filled with love for you. He's your biggest fan. And this is what's true about your life. But when you're going through something hard, it can take up a lot of your brain space. So try to take over some of that space with these things that are true. That can be your first step toward healthy coping. Now, let me stop here and say that for some of you, this isn't so simple. Maybe the behaviors you're using to cope are more than just unhealthy. They're harmful. They're hurting you and leading you down a difficult path. Or maybe the coping skills you have are there for a reason, because your home is unsafe or unstable. Your circumstance just isn't good, and you need a place to go or a way to avoid it. If that's you, please know we want to help you through that. Talking to your group leader or a trusted adult who can help you deal with whatever you're facing is a way to start to get the help you need. Please know this is a safe place for you to do that. And remember, you can choose what to do with how you feel.